is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Dan of Borders. Great to be able to talk with you, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, man.
Anytime, man. Anytime. It's so awesome to have you here. We got the brand new album Bloom Season coming out very soon. This album is absolutely kick ass and absolutely brutal. For people who haven't heard the album yet, though, and are just getting the first taste of it, do you feel like the first five singles that you released, Godless, Fade to Black, Fix This, Suffer, and NWWM, is a good representation of what this whole album is going to sound like? Or is there a lot more to be discovered?
I think it's a good representation. Typically, when we were going through the singles, we didn't just pick the songs that we thought were necessarily the top five songs on the album. What we wanted to do was ensure that we had a solid mix, um, so that people knew that we were trying to get creative with what we were doing. So, Godless is an example being a really, really heavy track, and then NWWM being a much more sort of rap side tune. So traditionally you would pick your five biggest songs, your five strongest songs, and use those in the album. Where we're split in the band as to which ones are the better songs. We think they're all really, really good. But the main aim that we tried to do is to just keep a solid mix in those singles so that when people do come across the album, they're not super surprised that one song is borderline death metal and the next one sounds like it's verging on Jay-Z, you know?
Yeah, which is what I love about it. It almost seems like the sky is the limit when it comes to experimenting with the material of your sound. Were you like continuing though in a similar vein of what we have heard on like the Diagnosed EP or the Purify album, or were you all trying to take like a new approach with the making of this record?
So with Purify, we experimented with the rap element of stuff, with War, and we kind of did it, and we put that song out, and we were like, oh, there's another. Well, there's a few bands that experiment with rap and metal. Obviously, I think it's a lot bigger in the US at the moment as opposed to the UK. It's much more of a newer thing in the UK. Um, and Yeah, we put that out, and we were really worried at the time, but it got great reception. So we thought, well, we really love it. Our fans didn't hate us for it, so let's lean further into that. And then alongside that, we came across Ollie, our manager, who introduced us to John, our producer, and he really took it to a new level where it didn't feel forced anymore. When we were writing it, mixing metalcore gen type music with rap can appear very, very forced. And our producer managed to put our music in a position where it didn't sound like that anymore. It sounds like it's supposed to sound, and it belongs how it does, you know?
Hmm. Well, it sounds like you had like a really good structure, and you really were going into like the making of Bloom Season with like a real vision and sort of like you were almost like prepared for war in a way, as I like to say. But was there at all
Yeah.
maybe any improvising at all with the course of the making of this album?
In terms of making the album, it was to say that we're all really proud of it, and we think it's our strongest album and our most unique album by a mile. It was definitely the hardest album that we've written. I know that everybody throws around the generic C word, COVID, but yeah, that's that was a real issue for us, in terms of writing, at least for the first half of the album. And we had a dip of time where we were able to um, basically just book a getaway and just hang out like bros, because we hadn't been able to do that for like a year. And we got really creative with the music that we were making on that getaway, and that's where the other half of the album came from. So yeah, we had a lot of problems with writing this album, but ultimately somehow it's come out the strongest thing that we've put together. So yeah,
Well,
it worked out in the end.
I think the hardest it is to make an album, usually the better it sounds. It is an unfortunate but pretty inspiring reality in
I've heard that
duality.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the album was if the album was very easy to make, I think something was wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
I think it was Iowa that Slipknot
Yeah.
nearly just broke up off the
Well,
back of writing that because they were in such a terrible, terrible headspace at the time.
I think that
And yeah,
they're in a terrible headspace with the making of every album, but yeah, like Iowa apparently was. Iowa was apparently, and Corey himself has even said it, the dark period of Slipknot. But that makes me really. I mean, Has there ever not been a dark era of Slipknot with the making of anything? Those guys really know how to use paint as a paintbrush.
Yeah,
Mm,
sure.
yep. Now, when it came, being that you incorporate all these elements of rap, but you also incorporate all these different elements between hardcore and, rap and metalcore and all along the periodic table, as a drummer, do you almost feel like, being that there's so many different styles, you almost have to incorporate many different techniques within Borders as well?
Yeah, yeah. It used to be so when we first started out, way before even Purify, we were considered a tech metal band at the time, and polyrhythms and edgy time and all that kind of stuff, and that's kind of like where we started with that. And as time's gone on, it's actually become a lot more simple to the point where we were joking about me playing in Borders now because when we wrote Nothing Wrong with Me, there's definitely more of that song where I just don't even play the drums, which is not ideal. Because the reason why I'm so into my heavier stuff is because what got me into drumming is heavier music. But no, there's still a few songs on Bloom Season that do push me and test me. But yeah, the style side of it has it's definitely complex, but it's not harder. It hasn't got harder as time's gone on. If anything, we've become, dare I say it, a bit more mainstream. So it's a lot more straightforward and easier to play. So yeah, which is nice because honestly, there's less pressure on stage and I have way more fun. So it's great.
As a drummer, have you always needed to hear music before you lay down your parts, or have you ever had like a whole drum pattern written that the band could write according to?
No, no. I'd love to tell you that I'm the main songwriter and I just smash out a load of drums by themselves and then it gets written over. But no, that's not how it works. No, our main songwriter is Gav, our guitarist, and he's an absolute riff machine, and he'll smash out loads of different sections of little things that he's got together. And we'll all get together and go over it in terms of vocal structure and drums and fills and all that kind of stuff. And that's typically how our writing process has worked since day one.
Mhm. Is it maybe easier to come up with ideas when you're in the company of your other bandmates, or is it better? Isolation being such a great fuel for creativity, is it maybe better to kind of like where there's nothing between you and the sound and your instrument? It's better to write according to isolation.
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of what we used to do was in collaboration, and I think that that's probably a preference of writing for the most part because you feel more involved with your bros whilst you're writing music. Um, but Fade to Black being our lead single, that song was entirely written in lockdown, and all the drums were done in lockdown. Um, and I was really, really excited to be doing. I mean, obviously, it wasn't great that I was in lockdown, but I was really excited to be putting that song together because it was the beginning of the next chapter. And I really did put a lot into writing the drums in that song. As to whether I would be happy doing that for every song on the album, probably not. It was nice to experience it on a solo basis, and I did enjoy it. But I like the interaction and the collaboration with my guys when we're putting music together is what it's all about for me.
hmm I mean, and especially with and not to pigeonhole you guys by any means, but like the hardcore metalcore aspect of it, there is such a unifying and unity aspect behind it. It almost seems like writing together is almost just as much part of it's like an almost essential part of the songwriting for that genre, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yep. Now, I was having a discussion with the drummer of Killswitch Engage, Justin Foley, about this actually. There's often like a misconception about drums because there's no melody incorporated in it, that it lacks emotion. But I think that's total bullshit, actually. But are you channeling, like, do you almost have to feel a certain way, or does the song have to resonate with you in a certain way? Or when you hear the music, does it put you in a specific emotional state of mind that we would be able to hear in the drumming?
Oh, certainly. I mean, like there's songs that we've written in the past. It's very much less like that now because we've kind of honed our sound and we know what we all like. But there's been songs in the past that I've had to play live where I just straight up just don't enjoy it because I don't really vibe with it. I don't feel it. I don't. that I think the song overall is great, but the parts that I'm playing and what I'm doing, it just doesn't feel great. And it's a really difficult thing to explain to people that don't play the drums. But being the backbone of the music, you really need to sort of vibe it for everybody else to feel it, and you kind of feed off of each other's energy, even in a rehearsal room, even more so when you're playing live. But you really do feel it, and yeah, it is important. But that's a big part of why I like writing the drums with everybody, because I mean I'll ultimately have the final say with me being the drummer, but it's important to make sure that you've got that big link across the board so that you're all really vibing the groove or the feel that you're laying down for the track that's setting the pace of the song, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny too, like with the whole live presence too, because I asked Austin from Lorna Shore this, where like you're looking at the same drum set whether you're in a rehearsal space or in a studio or on a stage.
Mm.
So does that at all make a different type of is there at all like a similar energy that you're channeling into your live presence as you do when you're in a rehearsal space or a studio? Is there anything remotely different about it, or looking at the same kit the whole time, it just feels like you're in your zone the whole time?
No. It's not the same. I mean, you've got the adrenaline of playing the show. There's the pressure of putting on a good show. There's the vibe that you've got with everybody when you're playing a show and you're all together and you're enjoying yourself. You're on a completely different plane entirely. So, in terms of physically looking at the drums, sure, but I'm pretty sure that when I'm playing a show, I hit them a bunch harder than I do when I'm sat in a rehearsal room with just the guys, because of just the adrenaline and the excitement and the togetherness that comes with all of it. So yes and no. It's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I've always been wondered about that. Like I've interviewed guitar players, bass players, vocalists, and they say, oh no, they're moving around on stage the whole time, or in the vocal booth they're kind of like more static. But I feel like with the drums, the famous saying, your drummer sucks, your band sucks. There's such a focus that you
Yeah,
have to channel into it that it sometimes gets kind of hard to get lost because of how pressuring it could be.
yeah.
When it comes also to like a lot of guitar work has to adjust to the vocal style as well. um like they have to change the effect or something like that depending if it's a more aggressive vocal or clean vocal. Is that also the case with drums though? Because I've noticed when I listen to like a metalcore song, they're hitting the ride cymbal more during the clean vocals and not so much during the aggressive vocals, etc.
Yeah, I mean we've got which we've never had on any previous releases, many more effects coming out of the backing track. So we'll have like trap hi-hats and all that kind of stuff, which is going back to when I said about the song NWWM. That song probably has uh, throughout it, there's either 50-50 or maybe even less drumming, as in an actual acoustic drumming. And a lot of that is compensating for me because of the shift of style that we've moved into. But in terms of the actual, cymbals and drums and things that I'm choosing to use, yeah, I mean, you're not going to be hitting a cowbell in a chorus, are you? You're going to be smashing out the biggest crash cymbal you can find in your big choruses. And yeah, it's a lot more dynamic is probably the best word. If you're playing straight up super, I don't know, grunge or metalcore or anything like that, the typical aim is to just hit the drums as hard as humanly possible, which I'm guilty of it. I love that stuff, but with our music now, we have to be a bit more dynamic with it because of the rappier side of it. There will be sections where I'll have a closed hi-hat and it'll be a bit more groovy, and I won't be hitting the drums quite as hard, so that when we do go into that big hard chorus, we're really making an impact, and we're crashing on the loudest things possible and absolutely demolishing the kit, which is something that you typically see maybe more so in like rock or whatever. But yeah, it's a slight style change that I've made, and I think ultimately it's made a massive difference in terms of our live performance. And so far, we've only heard great stuff. So yeah.
And when it comes to like the overall songwriting, or maybe this could apply to the live presence too, I guess, but Is it better if everybody in the band is on the same page when it comes to either creating something or playing live, or do you think if you're all kind of off in your own universe and everybody has their own experiences, maybe all being in your own little states of mind could actually help enhance the songwriting in a way?
We write when we're writing together, we'll intentionally write sections, knowing that they will pop off live, and we all, like, a big reason why we're in the band, and I think it's probably the same for most bands, is because you just love playing shows. That's what it's all about. Unfortunately, it's not as relevant, nowadays as it was in the 80s in terms of that being the thing that makes or breaks a band. But it's the most important thing to us. So we make sure that when we are in the writing process, is this going to sound good on record? Cool. Is it going to sound good live? Yeah. But not everything that you put on a record, and it's difficult to explain, but not everything that sounds good in a record sounds good live, and not everything that you play live sounds really good on a record. So finding that sort of key balance between the two, more often than not, songs that we don't push as singles end up sounding better live. It's odd how it works out that way, but yeah, we try and have a solid balance across the two. Once the album comes out and we get to smash all these songs live, then yeah,
Yeah, and
hopefully we get to come over to the US.
I was just about to ask you that, actually, because before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such an awesome discussion. I've interviewed a lot of drummers, but this I felt like was one of the most in-depth on a technical level, and it was great to be able to discuss the technique of that.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Just with the release of Bloom Season coming out very soon, is there just anything else that you would like to promote in terms of live shows, or can we maybe be expecting a Borders US tour?
We've got we're playing 6 album release shows. We didn't want to really push it as a tour as such. It's just lots of weekends where we're going to be going to sort of the key cities across the UK. We're not promoting it as a tour or anything like that. They're just album release shows, and it's just an opportunity for us to tour the new set properly. For those that have, new or old fans that want to come out and watch, that's great. It'll be our first opportunity to start shifting the album. And that's going to set us up nicely running into next year. We have got, in terms of US, we've got a bit of a split team. So our labeler in Germany, our manager is in the US, and our booking agent is based in the UK, which we found is really good because it gives us a really, really solid reach with various different industry contacts across the globe. So we've mentioned many times to our management that we'd really, really love to come over to the US. So it is something that's in the works, but I can't talk about anything being confirmed, as I'm sure you hear all the time on your interviews.
You know what? But
there's very little that I can I can really say about next year.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I feel like
unreleased stuff.
Well, you know what I've noticed is the least I ask at the end of every interview, is there anything else you'd like to promote?
Yeah.
The least the answer is, the better the shit that they can't talk about is. So I look forward to seeing what that is. Hopefully it's
cool.
Hopefully it's what I'm hoping for. It's a tour of all the UK hardcore bands that haven't come here yet. Like you guys, Employed to Serve finally comes here. Loathe actually did just come here, but you get the idea. Like bring every UK band that hasn't come here yet into one.
Yeah. No, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. But thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Borders Bloom Season. Be sure to check it out this November. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.
Thank you.